Oh, it's not personal, Ellen. Celeste just fits better. That's what my mother said after she used my birthday fund to send my sister to Monaco. No explanation, no apology, just a postcard from Nice and a photo of them in the car I was supposed to test drive. They didn't forget me, they replaced me. But I wasn't angry, not right away. I just stared at the empty chair at my own birthday table and thought, maybe this is what erasure looks like. If you've ever felt like you were the background character in your own life, drop a 1. If you've always been seen, say 0, and count yourself lucky. Because sometimes the loudest betrayal is the one done quietly, with your name still on the receipt. They said they were too tired. I said it was fine. What I didn't say was how many times I'd heard that before. I had chosen the weekend months ago, coordinated calendars, found a resort that could hold 8, planned for a slow dinner by the sea. The salt air, the white chairs, the low jazz. I wanted soft light and easy laughter. I thought if I made it beautiful enough, they'd want to come. My apartment faced Puget Sound. That morning, it was unusually bright, the sky a slice of pale blue above the water. I stood by the window in the black dress I'd bought for dinner. It was still on the hanger, the tag brushing against my wrist. You deserve this. I remembered the last milestone birthday, 10 years ago. Celeste had been swept away to a surprise spa weekend. I got a voicemail. Rain check, Mom had said, then added, things are just busy, honey. I smiled into the phone and said I understood. I thought 40 would be different. I thought I was different. A week before the trip, I sent out luggage tags, silver, engraved with our initials. Mom said they were classy. Celeste replied with a heart emoji. I didn't hear from them for 2 days after that. Then, the night before our flight, the message came. We're not coming. Too drained. Rain check? Just like that. No call, no offer to reschedule, no mention of the money I'd spent. I video called them anyway, smiled as the screen lit up with their familiar faces. Mom's makeup was done, her earrings delicate. Celeste had wet hair, like she'd just come from a shower. I asked if they were okay. Mom gave a tired look and said, It's just a lot, Ellen. Her voice had that polished softness, the kind you use when you're trying to avoid guilt. I nodded, said I understood. The next morning, I woke early. Couldn't sleep. I kept checking the reservation, hoping maybe there'd been a change, a glitch. But nothing shifted. Until I opened Instagram. There it was. Celeste, holding up her passport and a champagne flute. The caption said, Monaco with fam. The lounge in the background looked nothing like SeaTac. My breath caught. I stared at the screen, unsure what I was seeing. I zoomed in. The luggage tag on her carry-on. Silver, my gift. My heart did something strange. Didn't crack, didn't drop. It dulled. Like the moment your ears go underwater. Still there, but distant. I checked the airline confirmation again. My email, my points. But my name had been replaced, swapped for Celeste's. I kept looking, as if a second glance might rewrite what was already done. Hours later, I sat on the resort terrace I'd booked. 3 seats reserved under Carter family. I had told them it was symbolic, a way to say, we're here. But they weren't. I picked at the linen napkin, watched a couple nearby toast to something I couldn't hear. The sun was setting. The breeze smelled like salt and rosemary. The jazz trio I'd hired played to a near-empty room. My phone buzzed once. Jared. You okay? I didn't answer. Instead, I let my eyes wander to the black dress I'd folded beside me, still unworn, still with its tag. The promise of celebration pressed neatly into the fabric. I stayed on that terrace longer than I needed to. The salmon tartare arrived, delicately plated, untouched. I had picked it because Mom once said it reminded her of her honeymoon dinner. I remembered how her eyes lit up telling that story, how I had written it down and circled it in my notes. That detail felt so small now, like a love letter never read. A waitress came by and asked if I was waiting for others. I nodded before I realized it didn't matter anymore. She smiled politely and refilled my water glass. I didn't correct her. In my purse, I found the itinerary I had printed. Each page had color-coded blocks, notes for allergies, a map to the rose garden Celeste used to love. I thought maybe if I showed enough care, if I anticipated their comfort, they'd feel how much I wanted them there. But wanting had never been enough. Not at 30, not at 10. I remember once, in 4th grade, I came home with a perfect report card. Celeste had made the cheer team the same day. Mom clapped and asked if she wanted to celebrate with Sundays. When I held out my report, Mom said, "That's nice too, Ellen," before heading out the door. I never blamed her outright. It just became a rhythm. Me bringing things, then turning toward someone else. Even now, with a resort waiting, with the sea humming gently behind me, I still thought maybe they'd show up late. Maybe they'd knock on the door and laugh, say it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe the plane had been rerouted, or surprise was waiting. But there were no footsteps, no surprise. Only a message from the concierge asking if I still needed the family-sized table set for dinner. I typed "No, thank you," and pressed send. Then I got up, took the black dress from its hanger, and folded it gently back into my suitcase. The tag brushed my knuckles again. "You deserve this!" The words felt less like a promise now, and more like a dare. I wonder, not if they forgot, but if they ever meant to come at all. Grief isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like a shipping label with your name, on a box meant for someone else. It was raining the kind of rain that didn't bother with drama, just mist and gray, like the sky had decided not to try. Seattle disappeared behind the fog. My living room filled with the hush of a Tuesday working from home. No meetings, no calls, just the soft clack of my keyboard, and the occasional kettle hissing like it had secrets. I was halfway through replying to an email when the knock came. Not loud, just 2 polite taps. I opened the door and saw Marion, my neighbor from 4B, holding a brown package like it weighed more than it should. "This was at my door," she said. "Says it's for a Carter." She looked past me into the apartment. "Didn't think you were expecting anything big." "I wasn't," I said, reaching for it. The label had my name, E. Carter, in familiar typeface. No return address I recognized. I thanked her, and she waved it off. "Hope it's cake," she winked, and padded back down the hall in her pink slippers. Inside, I set the box on the coffee table. Something about it felt off. The tape had been cut and resealed, the corners slightly dented, like it had been passed through too many hands. I pulled at the flap. Inside were souvenirs, a glossy guidebook with a metallic edge, a small Eiffel Tower figurine, a keychain shaped like a yacht, and a note scrawled in blue ink. "Thanks, Celeste, for making this trip possible." I stared at it. My mouth went dry. The handwriting looked vaguely familiar, maybe one of Celeste's college friends or a coworker, but the thank you was clear, and I hadn't sent anything, not directly anyway. I sifted through the items. At the bottom was a folded invoice from the travel agency, booked under C. Carter, paid in full, with E. Carter gift vouchers. I sat back. My vouchers. The ones I'd carefully chosen as a holiday gift, accumulated through bonuses, converted credit. I remembered printing them, sealing them in gold envelopes. For a trip, I'd written, anywhere you want to feel free. They'd felt like an offering then. Now they felt like theft. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number on the invoice. After 2 holds and a transfer, a polite voice confirmed the details. Yes, Miss Carter, the reservation to Monaco was booked by Celeste Carter, but paid through your original gift certificates. Those covered 2 first-class seats. And the name changed? A companion swap was requested. No fee applied due to status tier. My heart knocked gently against my ribs. Not loud, just steady. I hung up. And then I called Mom. She picked up on the 3rd ring. I could hear the clink of dishes in the background. Ellen, she said in that tone, lightly alert, preemptively defensive. Did you know, I began, that Celeste used my travel vouchers for Monaco? A pause. Then, Ellen, this is not the time to be petty. It's not pettiness, I said carefully. It's theft. I'm sure there was a mix-up. There wasn't. She sighed. Celeste thought you weren't using them, and the dates worked. She wanted to surprise me. So she used my name? Let's not make this a thing. I didn't reply. The call ended quietly. No click, just absence. Have you ever realized your kindness was rebranded as someone else's generosity? That what you gave was repackaged, without your name? If that hurt sits with you, comment 8 below. Now, let's see what happened next. I sat still on the couch for a long time, not crying, not even angry, just still. Like the moment before a storm, when everything decides to wait. A memory floated up. Thanksgiving. 10 years ago. I had made 3 pies. Pecan, pumpkin, and an apple tart, Mom always said, reminded her of Vermont. Celeste had brought 1 pie, store-bought. That December, a family newsletter went out with photos. Only Celeste's dessert made the cut. Mine was cropped out. I never said anything. Maybe I thought silence made me the better daughter. Or maybe I was waiting to be noticed. I looked at the Monaco trinkets again. Symbols of something I had unknowingly funded, unknowingly enabled. And then I heard a knock. Marian again. I bought scones, she said, and tea. Figured you might like something warm? I smiled. You read minds. She poured the tea carefully, sitting across from me in the armchair no one else ever used. After a few quiet sips, I asked, Marian, would you come if I threw my own party? She looked up, grinned. Only if there's cake. Real cake. Not that low-fat nonsense. We both laughed. The kind that stays in the room after it ends. If they won't celebrate with me, I'll learn to raise a glass by myself. The house I rented near Lake Union was smaller than the photos made it seem, but the backyard had a charm I couldn't have planned better if I tried. A low wooden fence, string lights with soft amber bulbs, and folding chairs that creaked a little when you sat. Like they, too, had stories. It wasn't the Whidbey resort with crisp linens and ocean views, but it felt honest. Like me, still standing. I spent the morning arranging candles in jars, laying out small bowls of olives, slices of pear, and a plate of rosemary crackers I'd baked at midnight. A soft playlist looped from my teenage years. Joni, Nora, Tracy Chapman. The wind picked up just enough to move the edges of the tablecloth, but not enough to take anything away. For once, nothing was leaving. Dad used to say, "Quiet people build loud lives." I'd spent years wondering if he meant it as comfort or caution. Maybe both. Maybe neither. But tonight, I was testing it, one string light at a time. The first to arrive was Jared, carrying a chilled bottle of local cider and a small gift bag. He wore a navy linen shirt and that careful look he always had when he wasn't sure if he was stepping into my life or simply visiting. I smiled and let the hug linger half a second longer than I meant to. Still time to back out, he joked. Too late, I said. The cheese is already sweating. Guests trickled in. 2 women from my old office, a retired professor who once encouraged me to submit an essay about forgotten women in history, and Marion, my neighbor, who wore a wide floral hat that blocked the sunset from half the patio. She brought lemon bars, the real kind, with zest you could see. No one asked about my family. They didn't need to. Their silence was the kind that knew, not ignored. We moved easily around one another, passing drinks, offering seconds, laughing about the Seattle ferry delays, and how no one really understands composting anymore. At dusk, Jared handed me a wrapped notebook. For the version of your life only you get to write. I pressed the cover against my chest. It was navy with gold speckles that looked like stars. I stood. My hands shook just enough to make the cider in my glass ripple, but my voice held. Thank you, I began, for choosing to be here, for showing up, which, as I've learned, isn't a small thing. They clinked glasses. Marion dabbed her eyes discreetly. The professor raised her glass again, whispering, to not be cropped out. We ate grilled zucchini, laughed over old tech horror stories, and dipped bread in too much oil. I laughed, fully, openly, for the first time in weeks. It wasn't the kind you perform for balance or to keep others from worrying. It came from somewhere deeper, somewhere that had been closed for a while. A small girl, maybe 6, tugged on my cardigan near the end of the night. She pointed at me, then to a framed photo I'd put out on the table. One from college. Are you Celeste's mom? I blinked, then smiled. No, sweetie, I'm Ellen. That's enough. She grinned, satisfied, and ran off to chase a paper lantern drifting low in the yard. As the guests began to leave, and the string lights buzzed in the gentle quiet, I walked back into the kitchen to collect the last of the plates. The evening had left behind more than dishes. It left a calm in my ribcage I hadn't felt in months. Later that night, long after everyone had gone, I sat on the sofa with the notebook in my lap. I opened my laptop absently, intending to transfer some of my notes. A red flag email blinked from the corner of the screen. An old message from my bank. March 14th. I must have missed it. The subject line read, Beneficiary Change Confirmation. I clicked, reread, and reread again. My stomach chilled. Something felt off. I didn't expect them to apologize, but I didn't expect them to pretend it never happened either. The morning was already heavy with heat, one of those rare July days in Seattle when the air sticks to your skin. I had all the windows open, letting in what little breeze there was, but it mostly brought in the distant caws of gulls and the rattle of the old fan on my kitchen counter. I was working from the kitchen table, sipping coffee that had long gone cold, when her name lit up my inbox. Celeste. The subject line. Thanksgiving? No greeting, no acknowledgement of the past weeks, just a breezy suggestion to plan early. Should we do Thanksgiving at mine this year? Invite the Morrows, maybe. And hey, you could bring that beet salad you love. It read like a postcard from a stranger who remembered your handwriting, but not your face. I stared at the screen until the cursor stopped blinking. There was no mention of Monaco, no nod to my birthday, to the dinner never had, to the seats left empty. Just a digital shrug wrapped in casual planning. I didn't reply. The phone rang 2 hours later. Mom. Her voice was thin, measured, like she had rehearsed the words beforehand. It's time to let it go, Ellen. Peace matters more. I didn't say anything, not yet. She filled the silence with soft logic. People make mistakes. But it's not healthy to carry bitterness, darling. Family is about moving forward. I closed my eyes. Mom, I said slowly, do you think what happened was wrong? There was a pause long enough to hear the shift in her breathing. Celeste was just trying to make something beautiful. She wanted to celebrate. Maybe she didn't handle it perfectly, but what? My voice was calm. But it's fine because I stayed quiet? More silence. I hung up. Later that evening, Jared stopped by. He didn't ask what happened, just handed me a paper bag with a bag of Ethiopian roast and a small envelope. I opened it slowly. Inside was a printed screenshot of Celeste's latest Instagram story. Her wrist adorned with a delicate silver bracelet, captioned, "Gift from Mom, love you always." I folded the paper and slid it beneath my laptop. I didn't cry. Instead, I stood up, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled down an old accordion folder. Years of labeled envelopes fell onto my living room rug. Receipts, screenshots, emails, evidence of things no one wanted to talk about. Transfers I made to Mom for repairs that never happened. Gift cards used in names, not mine. Venmo notes from 2018 reading "for Mom's rent" that now I was realizing weren't hers to begin with. I flipped open my bank's secure app and cross-referenced the history. Each item clicked into place like a puzzle I hadn't realized I was assembling. Most entries were under C. Carter, not E. And still, the noise outside remained calm. Birds, faint chatter, the soft hum of the city moving on. There was a memory then, one I hadn't touched in years. A night when I was 7, Celeste had knocked a ceramic bowl off the counter. It shattered, loud and sudden, spraying across the kitchen tiles. I told Mom it was me. I thought I was being brave. She didn't say much, just wiped the floor, tossed the shards in the trash, and handed Celeste a scoop of vanilla ice cream as if the crash had never happened. I never got any. Now I opened my laptop. The folder of files blinked at me, quiet but waiting. I selected a batch and began to upload. I wasn't angry. Not loudly. Just precise. Just awake. I didn't cry. I opened folder after folder, proofs, patterns, paper trails, and let them load. One by one. Like something unfolding that had long been still. Have you ever realized that being quiet wasn't peace? It was erasure? And the moment you finally spoke up, you felt more like yourself than ever before? If that moment resonates with you, drop a 9 below. Let's see how it all unfolds. If they wrote me out, I still had the footnotes. That Saturday began like most others. Slow, pale light bleeding through the kitchen blinds, the tick of the old clock above the fridge slightly offbeat from the rhythm of the rain tapping the window pane. Seattle felt hushed, like the whole city was trying not to startle something fragile. I stood barefoot on the cold tile floor, kettle hissing on the stove. Jared was under the sink, half his body swallowed by the cabinet. The drip had worsened overnight. I could hear his muffled muttering, the occasional clink of a wrench. It was strangely comforting. I took out the folders I'd kept in the linen cupboard, thick with paper I hadn't touched in years. My name printed on every page, every receipt, every record I had ever sent home under the belief it mattered. A part of me still wanted to find I was wrong, that it had been a misunderstanding, that someone had simply misspelled the name, made a clerical error. But the evidence said otherwise. Bank statements, each monthly transfer to the account ending in -0981. I had the welcome letter from when we opened it for Mom, my name and hers. And yet, every incoming deposit from my end was logged under "Gift from Celeste." Credit card statements linked to travel bookings, the exact amounts matching the receipts I had forwarded months earlier. Rebooked, reassigned, rewritten. My efforts turned invisible currency. I paused on a note from 3 years ago. It was my birthday again. I'd sent Mom a winter coat through an online boutique in Portland. I found the delivery confirmation. And then, in Celeste's old Instagram post, there it was. The same coat. The caption read, "Thanks for the early Christmas gift, Mama. Love always." I didn't feel rage. I felt resolved. I opened a blank document and started logging each piece. I wasn't planning a lawsuit. I wasn't plotting revenge. I needed to see it all laid out, like a map. To know I hadn't imagined the years I gave. The quiet support. The belief that one day it would be seen. Jared emerged from under the sink with a grunt, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He didn't ask what I was doing. He never did when it mattered. He just reached into the brown grocery bag he brought earlier and handed me a small box. Inside was a bundle of printer ink and a new flash drive. "I figured you might need these," he said. Sometimes the loudest validation is that someone notices what you need before you say it. I nodded, blinking hard. "Thank you." The kettle clicked off. The air smelled like rain and possibility. Later that afternoon, Marion's card slipped under my door. A small note card, her handwriting wobbly but strong. "If you need a witness, I'm not as forgetful as they hope I am." She'd included a Polaroid from years back. Celeste, maybe 17, wearing a gold watch. I recognized it. My watch. The one Dad gave me when I graduated college. The photo was dated 6 months after he died. I had never given it to her. There was an email I hadn't opened. One from Mom, dated nearly a year ago. The subject line, "Just a favor." In it, she'd asked if I could make a deposit to help with Celeste's student loans while she waited for her promotion. I'd done it. No questions. The attachment was still there, a scan of a check. I zoomed in. The handwriting wasn't mine. The signature, mine, wasn't either. My breath caught. I created a folder labeled Discrepancies, dragged in every file. Then another called Correspondence, email threads, call logs, screenshots. I compressed the folders and sent one email. Subject, for your reference to, Mom, Celeste body, I know. Attachments, 2. No threats, no anger, just clarity. The response came from Marion first, by phone. "Ellen, I don't mean to pry, but I remember that watch. Celeste once told me it was a gift from her mother. I thought it was odd. You were always the one with Dad's sense for keepsakes." I thanked her. By evening, I had printed a summary document and sealed it with a Post-it. For review. No legal action yet. I dropped it off at the law office 2 blocks down, not because I wanted a trial, but because I wanted the option. And then, as night folded in, my phone buzzed once. Blocked number. "You'll regret this." I stared at the message. My thumb hovered above the screen. Then, I turned off the phone and left it on the counter. I didn't turn off the light. Instead, I pulled out an old photo album, one I'd almost thrown away. Inside was a picture of me as a child, hand in hand with Mom and Celeste. My face was cropped halfway out, but not my hand. That hand still held on. And this time, I wasn't letting go. Not theirs. To name choosing peace doesn't mean silence. It just means you don't need their permission to be whole. Seattle's mornings in late summer have a softness to them. Mist clinging to the tops of the trees, light spilling over rooftops like it's learning to spike again. I stood by the window in my kitchen, barefoot, holding a mug of tea I didn't need. The black dress hung loosely on my shoulders. It was the same one I bought for my 40th birthday, still with its tag at the hem, like a question that had waited too long to be answered. I wore it now, Not for anyone to see, not for a camera or celebration, just for myself, to prove that I hadn't vanished. Marion slipped a jar of blueberry jam through my mail slot that morning with a note taped to the lid. Just cause. Her handwriting wobbled, but the gesture steadied me more than I expected. Jared knocked a little later. He didn't come in, just handed me a warm paper bag of cinnamon rolls and said, "Take the morning slow." I did. By mid-morning, I was seated at the small round table, the one my father once fixed after it wobbled for months. I opened my laptop and logged into the account I'd created weeks earlier. Women Rising. The scholarship page still showed Draft at the top. I clicked Publish. The scholarship carried my name and no one else's. I wrote the description myself, carefully. For women over 30 returning to school after family sacrifice. In memory of all the things we weren't allowed to say. No edits, no committee, no compromises, just truth. Afterward, I exited the family group chat. Not out of rage, just clarity. I removed shared photo folders from my drive. I unlinked the financial accounts I'd once helped manage. Every click felt less like erasing and more like naming something honestly for the first time. That afternoon, I walked down to the park. Same path I used to take with Celeste when we were children, back when the world hadn't yet decided which of us was easier to love. The trees were still there. The bench we used to fight over had new paint. I sat and scrolled through my blog one last time before pressing post. I didn't name names. I didn't accuse. I just told the story as it happened. The birthday, the trip, the photos, the silence. I wrote it like a record, not a wound. The email subscriptions trickled in within the hour. Quiet notes. A few with just one sentence. I felt that. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Later, while crossing the street near the old florist's, an older woman in a deep green coat looked up from her walker and said, "That color suits you. For real." It wasn't about the dress, I knew. It was about being seen. I smiled, not to thank her, but to accept it. That night, I lit a single candle on my windowsill. Not for a birthday, not for grief. Just a marker. A quiet kind of beginning. I played a playlist from my 20s. Songs I hadn't listened to in years. My feet tapped along as I organized my pantry. I put the good plates on the bottom shelf, within reach. I rearranged the spices alphabetically. It sounds trivial, but it meant something. I was staying. At one point, I pulled out an old photo album, the same one I'd asked about as a child, the one where my name never made it to the captions. I turned each page slowly, not flinching when I found the picture I remembered. Celeste in her cheer uniform, Mom beaming, me half-cropped on the edge. My hand, barely visible, was holding Mom's. They hadn't erased that. I closed the book gently. I didn't need to rewrite anything. I just needed to know I hadn't imagined myself into mattering. When I crawled into bed, I noticed the silence in the house again. But it wasn't hollow. It was wide, open, like a page I could finally write on without anyone taking the pen. For the first time in a long time, I didn't rehearse any conversations in my head. I didn't draft comebacks or wait for apologies. I didn't imagine them knocking on my door, full of remorse and late love. I didn't need any of it. I was already home. Some silences don't beg to be filled. They just ask to be honored. In the end, I didn't need their apology. I needed my own acknowledgement that I had tried, that I had mattered, even when they refused to see it. I've come to believe that truth, when spoken calmly, becomes its own kind of shelter. If my story stirred something in you, maybe consider subscribing so we can keep exploring these quiet corners of the heart together. Thank you for listening. See you in the next story.